Today we're at the Rosslare Harbour Maritime Centre and I'm talking to Jack O'Leary and John Boyce.
You were on the Andrew, Jack, I believe.
I was, Brian. I joined the St Andrew in the early summer of 1961. And I remained in her, I think, until shortly before she went. I think it was about 1966. But when you compare nowadays, it was so primitive there. We didn't realise it was primitive, of course. But all the crew slept, the catering crew, about 18 of us, slept in the glory hall, which was a big dormitory down below below all the other decks. Well, it was on the waterline virtually. And that included 17 bunks, 2 sinks, and that was it really. And which meant the 17 men had to get ready in the morning, and 17 men tried to wash and shave in 2 sinks. It was kind of pandemonium. I was started off there as a assistant steward, but then they realised I was quite a big lad. Then they looked at me the details. They realised I was only 16, I think it was, which was too young to be a steward. So I was made pantry boy, which meant that you spent your life up to your elbows in hot water, washing plates, no fancy machines, all done by hand. And back in those days we were busy. I mean, she was only a small ship, 2,500 ton, but you could carry up to 2,000 passengers, sometimes more, must be admitted, because they had the quartermaster on the gangway clocking them on, and when he came to his limit he was supposed to stop, but they didn't always stop because there was hundreds of people left out on the quay wall waiting to get on, and in those days, I suppose 2/3 of the ship was first class. Maybe even more than that. And the other part was in the after end, which was second class, was a little small caboose of a place with a bar that served tea and beer and bottled beer and a little lounge. And virtually the second class passengers were left to their own devices, to be honest with you. It was a bit disgraceful when you think about it. And there was bunks for passengers downstairs called the sections, which were dormitories as well. Little fancier than our one in the glory hall, and the same in the first class, but they had cabins in first class as well. And that was unbelievable there in bad weather when you 2,000 people on board, and a lot of them would be up on deck in the open deck.
You have a little picture there, Jack, of the...
Yes, I have, that was just dug up there of the Andrew. There she is, if you can see her in that.
Yeah.
As you can see, she wasn't very big. A good ship at sea in bad weather. We slept down here, if you can see where I point. Down about there, that's where the steward slept.
Yeah.
Sailors are up here in the bow, the very bow of her. And the firemen and greasers, they were down here in the stern, which is a fairly awful place because you had all the steering gear down there. And once you lifted out of the water in bad weather, it rattled everything. It rattled fellas' false teeth there, never mind anything else. The sailors were as bad up here, up in the bow, the forecastle head. But in really bad weather, there used to be sneak down. There was, along on the first class end of her here, there was big long cushioned, I suppose what you call them, forms down along each side, and they'd snake down there in the night time and have a lie down there.
Yeah, so you used to go out in all sorts of weather jackets.
Oh yeah, there was not
yeah,
stuff.
It's different from the days now.
Oh yeah, I mean, in those days, unless the wind really held you onto the wall, you went out.
You always went to sea?
Always went to sea, yeah.
No matter what the weather was, yeah.
And it was vile weather sometimes, really vile weather. But they always made it out and made it back.
Yeah.
Fairly, there was never any... there was times we had to hide behind the Saltees, or the other times over, we were up behind Scomer and Skocum over on the Welsh coast.
Run for a bit of shelter.
You had no choice because, they were blinking broken up near enough, And I went from the Andrew to the David. On the David for quite a while, and that was what was the next ship, the Duke of Rosslare or the Caledonian Princess?
Duke of Rosslare.
Duke of Rosslare was the next one.
Yeah,
She was a fine ship too.
You were on that, John, as well?
Yeah, I served on the Rosslare, with a lot of the local staff, lads here in the village, and of course a good contingent of seamen, including Jack from Wexford Town, and Waterford.
And there was a lot of Waterford men in those days, quite a few. And the Duke of Rosslare was one of 3 dukes. The Duke of Rosslare, the Duke of Argyll and the Duke of Lancaster, built for the Belfast route. And they do the Belfast run, 2 of them in the summertime, I think only 2 of them. But what they did then in the winter, they cruised up to Norway, over to Amsterdam, and around to Norway, up the fjords, up to the Scottish Islands. And there was a kind of a prize that took crews from all over the coast to crew the ship. Some of our chief cook, Bryn Roberts, went, and Tony Wilkins, who was second cook at the time. They did the cruises. A lot of the stewards did, Mick Morrissey and Owen Morrissey, and a lot of the chaps went up there. Then they came back early summer, back to Rosslare again.
Yeah.
You know?
Good
Nice to
times,
get a break
Jack.
off the passenger run.
Oh yeah.
Something different.
Yeah.
But great times by the sound of it. Adventurous.
Oh
very
yeah,
much
yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah.
The
And
work
some-
was hard.
And some characters at times as
Well, there
well.
certainly were. Yeah, the work was really. I mean, we were doing 20 hours a day, no problem. And you know, I remember falling asleep with my hands in the sink, so going down with my hands asleep. And then there was one particular time we were short-handed, and there was only 7 men there instead of 17.
Good gracious.
And Johnny Murphy was second steward, the late Johnny Murphy here from Kilrane. And Johnny went over to the office and he just said, look, basically he told him, if you don't get whatever amount of money we want, the other 7 of us can't do it, we're going to walk off. I remember we had to scrub the ship out, and back in those days you had to scrub. It was a big hands and knees job with a scrubber, and we hadn't graduated to mops at the time, and you got down and you scrubbed by hand with a hand scrubber and soft soap, and we had to scrub from the very first class, not from the first class lounge, that was carpeted, from the first class outside the lounge right back through the smoke room out to the palm courts, and then you went across to the second class and did the same.